I notice you have a beverage. I have a beverage too. Can we talk about what you got there
Yeah, so
in your
this is
glass there?
this glass is from
That's
BWR.
I have a very similar glass from I believe Utah,
Okay. So
possibly.
yeah,
Yeah.
they made these glasses. They partner with Lost Abbey. And the funny story behind this is this glass was given to me by Ian Lopez San Ramon, who's only 19. So he's not old enough to drink. I let him stay at my house. And as a house guest gift, he gave me this glass along with the beer that he got. It's in the fridge right now from BWR since he's a couple years away from drinking, which makes me feel super old. And I'm drinking a Stone hazy double IPA. Stone is a local brewery to San
Yeah.
Diego, but the funny story behind that is my neighbor down the street works for Stone, so he always comes over and brings a case of something special.
Mm.
And yeah, I have a I don't want to say unlimited supply, but I haven't paid for beer in probably a couple of years, so that feels pretty good.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good deal. And for you not I'm guessing that you're not familiar with the Dirty Chain podcast vibe, but already you have like you fit right in with
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I
especially
didn't know whether to wear my suit and tie or
well
I was just like, screw it. I'm just gonna have a beer. Why not?
I'm drinking a beer too, so that's kind of where we sit. But fantastic. I so you had mentioned, and I don't know if we're gonna get this part, but like a little earlier about editing. And Sea Otter, we met at Sea Otter, which was fantastic. But you said you have a ton of footage. I,
Yeah, I
I was
mean,
go for it. Yeah.
it's always better to shoot more than less and have to deal with carving something away rather than wishing you had it. So as well as like the race itself, I've got a ton of behind the scenes. Luckily, at the house I was staying at, we hosted the Legion cycling team, which they may go gravel. That's the inside scoop.
Mm,
You heard it here first on the podcast. They may send a squad. They already have one rider, Lance Haydet, who is their one gravel guy, but they may send a squad to Gravel Nats and just treat it like a road race and just string it out. Who
oh
knows?
God.
So
It's let's like go on that string really quickly, but because I know that they brought in
sure.
Robin Carpenter, which
Yes.
he did Unbound a couple years ago, and he was riding for Rally or Human Powered Health, and I think he got sixth or something.
He
He
did.
was
He missed out of that lead group.
mm-hmm.
And fun fact about Robin at that race, he had just himself and his mechanic. And in the second pit, the mechanic, I believe, dropped the bike, banging the brake levers inward and only caught not allowing him to use I think was his front derailleur. And he just put the hammer down. Like he can, I mean, he's raced in Europe, he can motor. So he was in that chase group
Mm-hmm.
and was unable to catch Ian's group. But it was his first gravel race.
Yeah, right.
And he's just so strong. And that year it was so hot too. People were just dumping gobs of
Mm-hmm.
water all over their heads.
I
And
was actually able to interview him right after that because I thought it was interesting. There are like former pros that are doing gravel, and then he was like the first of the current pro doing gravel, and I thought that was really interesting and a little bummer. I mean, I so now he's riding for Legion. I heard that he might be doing more gravel, and then he crashed like a couple days ago, and I think
yeah, big
broke his
one.
collarbone and ribs and wrist. Like, oh man, I'm scared of crits. I can't believe how fast they ride those things, but that's what a bummer. Hopefully that it doesn't like ruin his entire season. But I actually did the same thing. I didn't break my wrist, but I did collarbone, mini
Mhm.
ribs last year, and it sucks. Ribs suck. That's the worst thing ever.
I know they're such an inconvenience.
Well, I mean, apparently they're right there when you breathe, when you laugh, when you sneeze. I mean, it's
Yeah, I know a World Tour rider that got two of his ribs removed so he could be more like better positioned on the bike.
what?
Yeah,
What? No.
George Bennett on Lotto,
No, no.
this
Oh
New
my God.
Zealand guy. He got two of his ribs removed, uh, so he could like I get either he had like extra ribs or his ribs. He's so skinny that his ribs would like protrude out of his body.
Ugh.
And he's like a pure climber. And I remember I was in Girona with him, and he was talking about it, like, oh, what if I got my ribs removed? Kind of random, but I think he did the surgery, and now he's more aero.
We may need to fact check that, Brian, but
Yes, always fact check.
yeah. So okay, so you were at Sea Otter. You're staying in the house with the Legion guys. Is that?
No, so
Oh, okay.
it's the house is actually the kind of known as the scratch house.
Mm-hmm.
All the scratch employees stay there. They brought like 8 people in. Alan Lim kind of brought everyone together. The Legion guys were invited, I believe. I don't know if I can say this, but I'll say it anyway. Scratch may be a new hydration sponsor for Legion.
Got it.
So Justin came in, the squad came in, they're fresh off of Redlands, and they had training camp in like Calabasas. So they drove straight up to the house, had dinner. And that was like the first night. And then the second night, it's just all these random industry people and riders and things like that. And I later found out like it's all organic. Nobody's invited. Like people just show up to the house. It's kind of this known thing. And luckily there's enough people we didn't run out of food, because Alan's job is like he's cooking everything. And they plan this menu like a month out. And Alan's like, I personally don't invite a single person ever. It's always people that just show up to the house. They all happen to be, somebody within the sport somehow. Like the other night or the last night, like Lachlan and his wife came over, and the new girl, Isabella, she's from Australia, new to the Lifetime series. She came over, and we were just hanging out. And it's just weird to me, because if I were to throw a dinner party, I'd want to know who's coming, how many people, all that kind of stuff. It's like super organic.
Aren't they? I mean, don't they refer to that as like the family dinners? Or
Yeah,
is that
family dinner.
Yeah, family dinner. That's great.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, there's other like videographers there too. It's not just me, but like Avery, who's Alexei Vermeulen's like right hand man.
Sure. Like
the two of us were like filming all night. It was
well,
funny.
yeah, and Avery now is he works for Scratch, right?
Yeah, so I got hired on to do their photo video stuff. And he's been with Alexei forever.
Mm-hmm.
Both Michigan people, as you probably already know, by the way.
Absolutely. Yep.
Go Michigan. I don't know if I'm doing the right. My wife's from Michigan, so
that's what. Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah, it's and for those listening, he's making the mitten with his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's right from my perspective. Where's she? What part of Michigan is she from?
It's called Oxford.
Okay.
Tiny little town. She did go to Michigan State though, in East Lansing.
Right. That's where I am right now. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's where I live.
Yeah, we went to a wedding there. And the couple that got married, they're so into Michigan State that they got married at the football stadium, which blew my mind. They like close the stadium. They have this like VIP, like upper box area, and the entire wedding and the reception was at the Michigan State Stadium. Blew my mind.
Yeah, that's go green, go white. A little aside, but speaking of family, my brother is moving to San Diego in the summer. So I think he bought a house. I don't know where. Okay. He's great story, Trevor. But he He's retiring from the military, got a job in San Diego, so he's heading that. So he's heading your direction.
Okay.
And I was thinking about that when you had the BWR glass because I've done Utah and Asheville or North Carolina,
Mhm.
but I think if you're gonna do a BWR, you got to do the OG in San Diego. So I'm hoping that in the future I'll be out that direction to do BWR in the future.
Yeah, you got to come. It's the signature event because that's where it started.
Hmm.
And it's the biggest turnout. And I'm biased, but I think the course is pretty good. I mean, it's still not technically gravel, and it started out as a road race with dirt. Guys are riding 23 mil tires with rim brakes on their road bikes, and not and before tubeless with tubes in it and everything. And now it's definitely this is the first year, by the way, somebody won BWR on a non-road bike. So Russell Finsterwald did it on his Crux, his cyclocross slash gravel slash everything bike, on a
What
one by and won the event for the first time.
what what do you know? You probably do because you were there and all that. But what kind of tires was he riding? What
He was, I
width?
believe, he was running 32 Pathfinders.
32s.
Yeah,
Holy
you don't
moly.
want to go above a 32 because there's still 100 miles of pavement.
Hmm.
And so the business end is full on racing. And so if everyone's running skinnier tires in the top 10, they're all kind of equal footing on the dirt. And the dirt's not super technical either. There are some sandy sections and the weather kind of wrecked some parts to it. But every rider that I was working with on the pro end, 32 up to 30, I think 35s was the widest. Um,
So I will say though, 2022, Alexi rode his NV. What? It's not the
Melee.
melee, and he shoved 40s into that bike,
Yeah,
and
he, I
he
mean,
and he destroyed, and he destroyed.
yeah.
uh,
That was a good one too. That was a great event. And at the time, we didn't know what the melee was. It didn't have a name. It was unbranded. I mean,
right.
we knew it was Envy.
Yeah. I remember Sea Otter 2, not this year, but the year before, and he was kind of hinting like, it's like I'm riding this new bike, and there's all this media around, and they're not even asking about it. It was unbranded. It didn't have anything, and people weren't. No one was really asking about what that bike was. And then now, I think people weren't thinking of Envy as a bike brand. They're thinking a frame brand. They're thinking Envy as a
Right.
wheels and carbon components. But yeah, now all of a sudden they're huge in the bike market. I did talk with Michael Marks about that a little bit, and he's like, yeah. Usually, I would think that the course that I made for BWR San Diego is, you don't need nothing more than 35, but then Alexi comes by and like just destroys it on 40s. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I wonder if Envy really loved that he rode 40s in that. It's probably not like made for that kind of clearance.
Yeah. I mean, it was dry that year and hot. So
Yeah.
no
Yeah, you're not
gunk
gonna.
or dirt.
Right, exactly. Um, which it was hot and dry at Sea Otter this year, but there were mud pits. Like there were these mud pits that. Okay, let's push pause for a second, or
Sure.
um, we're kind of getting into all of these different conversations, but it's pretty obvious as we're talking that you connections are not what I'm talking about, but like you've been a part of things for a couple years. You've I mean, you're at the family dinners at for Scratch. You're talking about being in Girona and meeting what's his name? uh
George Bennett.
George Bennett.
Yeah.
You're talking about, these different races over the like what let's can you give me an intro, give my listeners an intro about like, Veloworthy? How did you get from whatever to now you're at Sea Otter, you're at these dinners, you're talking to these athletes, you're like in the mix. Give us a little bit of an intro, of a little origin story of Brian and Veloworthy.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a cycling family. So when I was a kid, I didn't play, football or baseball or anything. It was just cycling. My first bike race, I was 8 years old, and it was a BMX race. And when I was in middle school, I was already shaving my legs because I was racing on the road. And I have my older brother, my cousins. We were all racing. And in those days, like as racing juniors, when you got dropped, they didn't wait for you. It's like, okay, see you at home. And so cycling's just always been something that I've stayed with. When I went to college and I raced collegiate, never made it to the pros, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I'm just a shade younger than the Lance Armstrong group of people, and we all know how that turned out. So I moved to San Diego in 2001 from Northern California because the weather's so good, you can train year round. So I got a job at a bike shop, just working there and riding bikes. And then I realized like San Diego is so good for cycling, but it's actually even better in the sport of surfing. So I took like a decade off and just surfed my brains out. I traveled, to Indonesia, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica and Hawaii, and just traveled and kind of took a break from the sport. Like, first time in my life, I was in my 20s, and I still followed the Tour de France and things like that. And then I decided one day I'm just going to get back into it. So I had a beach cruiser, an Electra beach cruiser with three gears on it. And I decided to just ride up and down the coast. It's super popular in San Diego, beautiful views. And then, I don't know, something clicked where I just wanted to ride a lot. So I was doing 10 miles a day and 15 miles a day, up to 30 in board shorts and a t-shirt.
On your beach cruiser?
On my beach cruiser and my old helmet. This is a, beach cruiser with a kickstand and a bike lock on it.
Oh yeah.
Big wide handlebars. And there's this climb in San Diego called Torrey Pines. Speaking of Robin, he has the KOM from it. He stole it from Phil Gaiman. And it's a good 10-minute climb if you're okay. And they're doing it in like 5 minutes. Oh, and I remember one day I was like, okay, I'm going to take my beach cruiser on this climb, but I'm going to really push it hard. My tennis shoes. And if I can pass like a true roadie in full kit and like a nice bike, if I can pass someone on my beach cruiser, I'm going to go out and buy a bike, like a proper road bike. And so one day, I was like a Saturday, because there's tons of people that do this climb. It's just a straight up and turn around and descend back down. And I did it. I passed like 3 guys. They were all looking at me like I was nuts, I'm sure, because I'm out of the saddle. The thing is, this beach cruiser, the saddle's so low, like you can't generate any real power. So I'm standing up and I'm rocking the bike back and forth, these big fat bald beach cruiser tires. And I pass them. I'm feeling good. I don't even have a computer or Strava or anything. And so I go out and I buy a used BMC T machine. And then that becomes my bike for the next few years. And then I start kitting up and none of my clothes fit. And I'm like, damn it, I weigh myself and I'm like 20 pounds over. And so I'm like, okay, I got to start dialing in all this and that. And then 3 months later, I signed up for my first crit, the CBRs, which are basically a parking lot crit. But it formed, the Williams brothers and Bahati and Sharon Smith and all those guys. So I'm in there doing it, and it's aggressive. And, I've raced crits before, but not in over a decade. And I end up getting 13th place out of, maybe 100 guys. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting the bug now. So then I really dial it in. The age category I'm racing is 35 plus, which is probably the most competitive age group, not counting the Pro 1-2s.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys race Pro 1-2 anyway. And so I'm in it. I start a blog at the time. This is back in 2012 when blogging was a thing. And then that kind of, I got lazy on the writing, so that didn't go well. So then in 2016, I start the SoCal Cyclist podcast. And in it, I start interviewing my friends. And then it turns to, I had this goal of interviewing one person every single week for 52 weeks. So it's 52 guests in person. And this is before Zoom. Well, maybe not before Zoom, but nobody was using Zoom.
Sure.
And so people would be literally like coming over to my house. And I happened to live in Carlsbad at the time, which is kind of a hot spot for cycling. So people would just come over to the house. I had like Amber Nevin, like the national time trial champ. She like drove over. This elite triathlete Taylor Spivey. She lived across the street, so she just walked over to the house. And I recorded them all. I did my 52. At the start of my first year, it was just my Cat 3 and 2 friends, and by the end, it was like Phil Guyman and Jeremy Powers and that crew. So it kind of had this weird arc. And I did that for 3 years. And then my last episode that never aired was the Butcher Box cycling team. And a week later, the pandemic hit. So this is February 2020. And then I'm like, all the races are canceled. I don't know what to do. I paused the podcast. My last podcast episode that aired was like Amity, from like right after she won Unbound or Dirty Kansas at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the pandemic, like it was the worst time because I sold my house 2 weeks before the pandemic. We stayed in an Airbnb for 3 months. Nobody was wanting to sell because we were like, we could buy. San Diego market's a pain. And then I was like, well, what if I just start making videos on YouTube? And I did. I made my first video. And at the time I had like 12 subscribers. And then it just slowly started happening. Like I got a call to go to this race, Rock Cobbler.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this weird, like somebody knew me that knew someone. And they're like, oh, the race announcer can't go. Can you sub in? I'm like, I've never announced a race. What am I going to do? Because they know me from the podcast. So I show up. I have my GoPro in one hand and the mic in the other. I'm filming myself announcing the Rock Cobbler.
Oh my God.
And then I put that on YouTube. And from then I was like, well, what if I just started doing races? And then I did Dirty Kansas. And I just brought my little $500 camera and filmed it. I put it, edited it on iMovie, and it got like 60,000 views.
Oh,
and I think too, because like I knew a lot of the riders, like at the time, like gravel was even smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking to them and recording and just holding my camera up in their face. And it just turned into this thing. And then I started going to more races and more races, to the point now where I got invited to, speaking of Girona, Velo News asked me to go to Girona, and I did some work for them doing a podcast interviewing the EF athletes for their Tour de France prep. So I got to stay there and hang with those guys. It was a lot of fun.
What, this season?
This is 2019.
This is 2019.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I went with me, talk about a crew, me, Alan Lim, Ben Delaney, and Greg Irwin, who, if you don't know, he's the drummer for Saint Motel, this awesome band. And he was just the photographer, and he does it for fun. And he's best friends with Taylor Finney. So Taylor asked him to come and shoot for fun. And when he's at work, he's like touring the country with his band. So I felt like I was like a literal rock star with this crew. And we were in Andorra and the Pyrenees and then Girona, and everywhere we went, we were just hanging with all the pros, kind of embedded. So you learn to kind of not fanboy too much, even though in my mind, I was like fanboying among like Simon Clark, and we were covering the North American. So it was Lawson Craddock and TJ Van Garderen, those guys. And we were there for their team time trial practice, which, man, if you want to geek out on bikes, it had all the TT bikes ready to go. And that I was fanboying, but then I'm like, okay, I felt imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, I belong here too. Like I totally
Sure.
belong here. I'm actually getting paid money. And it was a workcation because I still work full time. So it's still a
Uh,
lot of fun.
Holy moly. A lot of things there. Did you have any, like, you kind of just said, I was into cycling and then I started a podcast. Was there any, um, do you have anything before, like, do you have, like, with podcasts or have you ever done that before? Or you were just like, I think I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to jump in. And same with video. Like, was
Yeah.
it a learn as you go along kind of situation?
It still is. It never
It still
ends.
is.
I mean, I'll probably finish this podcast and go, oh, I should have said this or that. And I've done so many podcasts. It's kind of cool being on the other
Mm-hmm.
side of the mic. But for the podcast, all I did, and this is 2016, I just looked up on Apple Podcasts, cycling podcasts, and there was like five.
Yeah.
There were Phil Guyman had his. There was this one from like this trio of guys. And I'm like, well, what if I just start my own? And that week, my wife had left to New York for a week. I was like by myself, and I'm like, what if I just became? So I made a podcast, a website, and just did it. Like I get this weird OCD about things sometimes, and I just totally focused on it. And I said, okay, I want to make the podcast that I think people want to listen to, and not just be a reporter kind of thing. So I just started making them like these one-on-one podcasts with people. And I think that's kind of the trend now with podcasts. I know like Payson's super successful with his, and he pretty much just does the same thing most do, but he has a huge following.
Yeah.
And so I just learned it. And then with video, like I still like today I'm editing and I'm like YouTubing, oh, how to make this transition. So, like this is the first year I bought a new camera. I had that $500 camera for 3.5 years. And I'm standing next to, the thing is at these big, big gravel events like Unbound, you're standing next to people with $10,000, $20,000 rigs. And
Yeah.
I'm with this $500 camera holding it elbow to elbow. And my goal is, look, I want to run lean. I don't want to hire people. Any money I make, it's from YouTube ads. And then I also partnered with a few brands to help fund me to go and travel. And I told myself, like, once I make enough money, I'll actually buy a decent camera. So I bought one about 4 weeks ago. And so the BWR video I did, that's with the new camera.
I mean, so that's crazy too, because so I think how I don't know you from the podcast. I know you specifically from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and probably 1 year at Unbound is
Okay.
when I like saw that you had a ton of footage, either Unbound or Mid South, or I'm not sure which one was the first time I saw some of your stuff, and then it's like, holy cow, like this dude is everywhere. I mean, you're interviewing athletes, you're at these dinners,
Yeah.
you got you got the little mic out, right? Is that your? I'm kind of
Yeah.
disappointed that you don't
My
have the
little
little
purple
mic.
mic.
Yeah, you don't have the little mic for this for this interview.
It's actually a decent mic. It's like $7 on Amazon. But uh, the thing about it is, I think what differentiates me from these, flow sports that put thousands and thousands of dollars into doing it is I have, for whatever reason, a relationship with the athletes where they know I'm not going to burn them. They know I'm not going to put them on blast unless, I had this talk with Ben Delaney in
Hmm.
Girona about when he was, reporting during the Lance years. And I'm like, so when do you know when to burn someone? He's like, you have to burn someone if it's for the greater good. If it's not for the greater good, don't put them on blast and just don't say anything, because there are people in the gravel peloton today that I will never interview because they are such a-holes. And they have this reputation in the pack. When the camera's on, they're one person, and when the camera's off, they're a completely different person. And so with the athletes that I do talk to, we have a rapport, we have a relationship. They trust me. Like I was interviewing Sophia, who won Sea Otter, just was it last week, a week ago?
Yeah.
And I always say at the start, before I start rolling, hey, I'm Brian with Veloworthy. Just
Sure.
because I do that out of a lesson I learned at Tour of California, because I was interviewing a rider on like Astana or some fancy world tour team, and he grabbed my credential and he looks at it and goes, "Who am I talking to?" And then he kind of threw it back, toward my chest, because I didn't introduce myself. So since then, I've been doing it over and over and over. So I'm with Sophia. She had just won the Fuego, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Brian with Veloworthy." She's like, "I know who you are. I watch all your videos." And to me, that's such a huge compliment. And I guess some riders have told me like they go on the trainer and then like watch the videos while they
Nice.
like sit on the trainer and do it. So I think it's the relationships. To answer your question, with the athletes, they know I'm not going to burn them. I do document, if there's 9 cameras around and they're filming, I take a step back to get the tone of what that atmosphere is like. And I just, I work with athletes who I think have a lot of promise, both on and off the bike. Last year I worked with Brennan Wirtz, who I think is going to have a great year this year. He's on a new team. And he's just a really good person, like
He's on
really
the
nice guy.
he's on the Lifetime series this year.
He
I don't think
is.
he wasn't last year, right?
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
He's on it this year. He was on the Pinarello Scuderia team. And, I was following him around for the year, and he's just a super interesting guy. 6'5", he stands out in a crowd. Former champion rower.
Rower, yeah. That's a big dude too. 6'5". Holy
Yeah, we
moly.
went out to dinner, and he did a 5-hour ride. Then he ordered a large pizza, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is for us." He's like, "No, no, no, this is all for me. I'll give you a slice." And he ate the whole thing. Then the server's like, "Oh, can I get you guys anything else before I drop off the check?" He's like, "Yeah, can I get a cheeseburger and fries and another beer?" And he downs that. And I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy he's a machine."
I will say I might be able to go head to head with Brennan Wirtz in a food eating contest, maybe beer drinking too, but probably not
Yes.
cycling. And I'm much shorter than him too, so probably kilograms might be the same. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so yeah, last year it was my first year of like the channel being funded. It was the first. I mean, I'm not even at 10,000 subscribers yet. But the amount of views on the videos are growing. Like last year's Unbound's almost at 250,000, and
Well,
it's just last year was tough. I was with Mo Wilson for the first half of the season. She stayed at my house for BWR. I'm still like struggling with that. Like she was such a good cyclist, but I mean, nobody knew who she was at the start of the year. And, her trajectory was so high. And, I got to, I was talking with someone, and they're like, you probably have the most footage of Mo anywhere. And then when that happened, it kind of hit the press, and then I got hit up with all these requests to talk about it. I denied every single one because I wasn't in the right headspace, but people stole my footage. NBC stole my footage and used it for their Dateline show without permission. It kind of messed me up. So I took a little bit of a break at the end of the year because I was pretty burnt. I mean, what you don't see is all the travel and the delays and the airports and your camera equipment gone missing, and your batteries running low and all that. So, and I think I got so much support from other cyclists because they knew I was with her and Brennan for the year that, they were just really supportive of me, which is rare. You don't see that from the athlete to media side.
sure.
And I think the thing is, they don't see me as like a journalist, and I don't claim to be a journalist, but they see me as kind of one of them. Even though I'm not a pro, they see me at the events, and it's the same people I talk to. I mean, I do get a lot of shit for not talking to the last place person or the mid-pack person. But I do focus on kind of the business end of the riders. And so they trust me and I trust them, and we have kind of an understanding. And, I just think that with the videos and the media side, you have to earn that, because if you're just some guy with a camera, like if you hire like a wedding photographer to go to an event, they don't know who to shoot. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know how to joke around with a certain cyclist. You don't know which cyclist. Like I've seen cyclists cross the line, and just on their facial expressions alone, you can tell they don't want to talk to anybody.
You're like, I'm not touching him right now.
Yeah. Like I remember last year, Sea Otter Pete broke his wrist, and
yeah.
I knew like he was holding it like up to it, like up. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bother him. Whereas I've seen other journalists like stick a mic in someone's face and they've gently batted it away. So I just kind of take like a 3 Mississippi, assess, be like, okay, who's up for it, who's not, and I have to do that really quickly. And then when I'm done, I just ask them a quick like, okay, are we good? And then a lot of times they'll say yes. So that's my secret formula.
I think it's pretty awesome though, because we are now at a point where you use the word journalist and then say you don't see yourself as a journalist. I think we're at a point where we can actually, you and I, or anyone actually, anyone right now can be doing a podcast or can be doing a YouTube channel, but it is more so about the relationships you build with people. And I think that's what I see with you more so than anything else, is like the relationship with different riders or groups of people or the community itself. It's like you need to create those relationships, be trusted. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing. And then people feel like riders feel like it's okay when you put a small little microphone in front of their face or a camera in front of their face and you say, buddy, how was that? Or holy cow, that was a hard race. How do you feel now? And it's that trust that you can't, anyone can do a podcast. Anyone can do a YouTube channel. Not everyone can gain that trust from athletes. And that's something that in the last few years, I feel like you have kind of carved out for yourself, which is pretty impressive.
Thanks. You have to remember too, unless you're the winner, you're not having a good day at work if everybody wants to win. So if you're second place through whatever and you didn't win and you're that pissed or bummed or you're angry about the feed zone and who didn't wait up and who did wait up at the feed zone, that's a whole other thing, because I'm one of the few people there I can actually see it go down.
Right.
You're kind of getting people to talk about a bad day at work when all they want to do is just change or get a beer or put their feet up. I mean, I've walked up to athletes with my camera with an extra beer going, here, I brought you something, and then they drink it and then we're talking.
Right.
So again, I'm not impartial. I'm biased. I like certain people. Certain people like me. There are brands I love to work with. There's brands that see me as competition and don't want. I mean, I've heard brands like through people say, "Oh, if Veloworthy wasn't here," they see it as a threat, which I take as a compliment. But I'm at the point, like for BWR, I hosted, Flavia and Paige, who got second and third, who like stayed at my house. Like you wouldn't see that in other sports,
sure,
like football players staying at, a reporter's house. But, we stayed with them with the understanding like, hey, I'm going to take care of you, but I'm also going to have a camera running. So again, it's that trust. And also with the sport of gravel, like you can kind of, if anybody wants to do it badly enough, they can do it. Nothing's stopping them. You just have to know the right way to do it. And gravel is not being monopolized by these big channels anymore. I mean, Lifetime is huge in terms of its sponsorship, but they are not the only media. When I was at Unbound, there's like, I think they were saying over 100 journalists, and a lot of them are from different brands. Some are from, different like cycling tips and things like that. And you just have to know, like, okay, what is my value I bring? And my goal is the same at every race, to be the most watched event on the internet. So if I can say that with confidence, like, hey, I'm the most watched Unbound video on the internet, then they should not say, okay, you can't come. Hopefully.
Wow. I think that's a crazy, impressive goal to have for sure. It's, I look at things like gravel, for instance, and then also like podcasting, YouTubing. It's kind of like the it was, I guess, kind of like a wild west of sorts, where it was easy to get into. It's, anyone can line up at Unbound. Well, no, kind of. I mean, if you get into the race,
Get in the lottery.
most everyone can get into a gravel race. Most anyone can start a podcast, but then now it's kind of become something else. But it is a little bit of a luck situation where you got into podcasting at a time where it started to get huge, and then also now you're getting into this gravel scene thing where it's also becoming huge. So it's like you kind of hit these things at the right time, and you were in the right time in the right place, and now it's like you had a media platform, and now you already were there with cycling. You knew what you were talking about, and then you were there ready to talk more about gravel, and you just right place, right time. I see that over and over again with things, and I think that you're a great example of that as well. It's interesting. I did want to talk to you because I think you have an interesting perspective of how gravel is progressing. And your perspective is kind of like my perspective. It's not a journalistic perspective. It's not a race director perspective, and it's not an athlete perspective. It's something else, and you're seeing it in a different way. And I did want to ask you about so Lifetime seemed like a success last year. It seems like it's going to be a success this year. There's different races. Lifetime doesn't incorporate the entire spectrum of gravel, thank goodness. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I'm kind of interested in your You've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but I am interested in your perspective about what I love to see it booming. And then at some times I'm like, is it too, let's pump the brakes a little bit? I don't know. I'm a little conflicted myself. I raced the Fuego XL. That's not gravel, it's mountain bike. But it was like, oh, I love to be here with all these pros. Sea Otter's amazing. But then other times I'm like, would I rather be doing a local race, or I don't know. So I'm kind of interested in your perspective on this a little bit.
Yeah, well, gravel's cool. And whether that's brands making it cool, the certain type of rider personalities making it cool, the coverage that's making it cool, whether it's me or a million other different people. I've seen people race in jorts, and I've seen people race in skin suits.
Right.
So it's a wide range. And I've always equated gravel to like the UFC, where not in the fight sense, but in mixed martial arts, you have your specialists, your boxers, your jiu-jitsu people, your Muay Thai people. And in gravel, it's like you have your mountain bikers, your roadies, your Heather Jackson's a triathlete. So you have people from other cycling backgrounds that are coming to this arena where it's kind of every year Unbound it's anybody's game. Who knows? Nobody knew who Ivar Slick was.
Nope.
Prior to Unbound. I saw him. I'm like, oh, that's another Euro here. No, people knew who Ian Boswell was, and so that's what makes it exciting. And I think, with the fact that you're riding on mixed surfaces away from cars, away from certain danger, there's the adventure aspect, and there's an event every weekend now. And it's also, are you going to do a parking lot crit and then get in your car and drive home for 2 hours? Or are you going to do a gravel race and have a beer and party and listen to live music
Yeah.
and hang out with your buddies, and because you're all kind of in it together? I think that's the appeal. The racing side is capturing that plus making it super competitive, and sponsors love it, athletes love it. I mean, pre-lifetime, if it wasn't lifetime, it would be something else at this point. So
Well, I mean,
I'm just
you already
I'm
see.
lucky.
I mean, BWR is doing a similar thing with all the different races they have.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're totally right. If it wasn't Lifetime, someone else would come in and do a similar thing. Yeah.
Right. And I just think that, I mean, it could be a fad, who knows? But I mean, I was riding on dirt on my road bike long before a gravel race just because it was fun. So, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Uh, I think it's kind of here to stay. And you look at a race like Unbound, it sells out, and it's a lottery system. You can go day of a road race and just sign up because there's
Yeah.
there's just not enough demand. I mean, there is in
Yeah.
some parts of the country,
Yeah.
but other parts, like, okay, the field's like 12 people.
Well, I mean, and you would know because you go to these events, but it's not necessarily always about the race. It's about the experience around the race, or it's the race and the experience. Like
Right.
Mid South, I mean, it's an experience, right? Like you go there to experience Bobby and that vibe and Stillwater, and it's not necessarily only about the race. The race is a component of it, but a not not the only component of it.
Right. You're absolutely right. I think deep down, as evolved as human beings are, we're still searching for community. We're still searching for our tribe. We're still searching for a sense of belonging. And the bike race is just a metaphor for this need to be part of a community. And the gravel community, I think, is way more inclusive than other disciplines. I mean, I've been to bike events where they have, a non-binary category on the podium, which you would never see it at other races, or races where they just want to bring in as many people as possible. One race, has like complimentary daycare for kids. Like, you just don't see that. So
Right.
I think it's a sense of community. I think people want to belong before and after. They want to suffer together. If you look at marathons, yeah, there's 20 people that can win Boston, but most people there aren't like paying attention to that. They're going for their own personal best or just to finish. So I think gravel's diverse enough to have the people that are the completers that want to do it. They work a regular job and build their whole year around an event like Unbound. And then you have the pros that it's just one race in the calendar of many. But in the end, everybody wants to belong.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I hope, and I think if you start seeing some races not focusing on those things, or like rather focusing on the pointy end of the spear instead of other or the rest of the event that makes the event happen or is the best part of the event, um, that's where I get a little concerned. So if there is a lifetime event where the only thing coming out of it is who won, who lost, that's where I just hope that that's not the only thing. That's not what we're going to. Like I hope that gravel cycling or this type of American cycling isn't just going to become another, okay, who's the pro? who won, who lost. Let's move on to the next one, because I think it has, like you said, it has so much more to offer than just that. And as like people need to report on something, so I'm sure that maybe that's all we're seeing. But yeah, that's just like a little concern of mine, that it's with the with increasing popularity and then also a prize purse, then this is what we're going to be seeing.
And anytime you throw money at it, it's going to get competitive. And
Yeah,
that's why
yeah,
races like, BWR get criticized by the non-competitor. I mean, if you're in that top 20, you have a support car, you have motorcycle escorts where you can grab a bottle, you have a lead car, you have a media car, covering that. But if you're outside of that, if you get a flat, you're on your own. If you need a
mm-hmm.
bottle, you're on your own. I got criticized in some of the comments of like, why is there a vehicle with bikes on the top treating it like it's a road race? So, and it is only for the top 12 or 10 or however many got whittled down to. If I was competing, and this is one of the things I saw at the end, like the winners of BWR, they're doing the 130 miles, and the wafer people, which do the 70, they're actually coming in around the same time.
Sure.
I kind of felt bad because the winners are like, everyone's focused on them, and then someone crossed the line and they're gassed out and they're just like, okay, move to the side. We got the pros here. I'm like, well, they rode a hard race too.
Well,
they shouldn't be pushed to the side.
That's so funny, because I mean, maybe it was last year Unbound, but it's the same thing with Unbound, right? Like they're coming in at the same time as people doing the 100-mile, which is still 100 miles. Come on. Hard. Like I can't believe that is considered one of the lower race, not lower, but like less distance. But you will see finish photos of people, of some of the winners of the 200 coming in right by some of the 100-milers, and it's very confusing. You're like, what's going on? Is he sprinting that person, or like, yeah, it's, I just like, I'm at the same time, I'm such a big fan of all, like seeing all these pro names and seeing them at all these races. And then, with my short experience of being part of the gravel community, I want to be protective and make sure that it doesn't get ahead of itself a little bit, or it's not like 90s mountain biking where there was a lot of money thrown into it and then it just kind of imploded,
went away
on itself. Yeah. And I hope that it can continue to be. I mean, I see races locally. There's Barry-Roubaix in Michigan, which has 4,000 plus riders and doesn't have, this media frenzy, but people go to it and they love it. And year after year, it's a success, and I will continue to go to it every single year. And that's what I hope that continues in the gravel community, or the gravel racing scene. And then, if a Pete Stetina shows up, which he has, if Alexei Vermeulen shows up, which he has, like, that's awesome. But then also, it doesn't need to be like the biggest and the best and the newest thing. I don't know. I'm a little conflicted, I guess. And maybe I shouldn't be, but
no, I get it. But the job of a pro cyclist is to sell bikes or sell whatever product they're to people who pay retail. And if they have the skill set of being at the front, that's kind of job done for them. But I get what you're saying. Like anytime something, in surfing, it's the same way. You have your soul surfers, and then there's a competition and people scoff, like, why do they have to shut down the beach? I just want to surf. It's the same way with gravel. I think as long as people don't lose sight of and my friend Dave from Gravel Stoke, the spirit of gravel. It's this nebulous thing that's okay. What is the spirit of gravel? Is it a Pete Stetina who comes in first, or is it somebody who trained 9 months to finish an Unbound, who's never done any other ride before, and they don't even call it a race, they're just
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
Or is it all of the above? So
Or is
that's
it Bobby Wintle?
right.
Yeah.
Is it the game makers?
Yeah. I tell you what's not the spirit of gravel, and
Sure.
I just talked about this in the last episode. It was so Barry Roubaix was a couple weeks ago, and Salsa came back out with the chase. It's like Chase the Chase, and everything. And so they had it on the course, and I was in the group. I think I was sitting I was in a group that was maybe 9 to 15. So top 10 was in that group. We're coming up on the chase, and I needed a sit down. I needed a little break. and then I saw that there were signs, get ready to take a picture, have a load off, all this stuff. And I was like, thank God that this is happening. And guess what happened? No one stopped. And they just pushed on, and I think all it had, like, probably just the first guy that was like, I'm not stopping, and then the second guy's like, well, I'm not stopping, the third, I'm not stopping, and then I'm in the back like, God damn it, like and at that moment I lost him, because they had a little gap on me. I thought we were stopping at the chase, and then just lost him. And I remember in my mind, I was like, the spirit of gravel died today.
It's because of those hammerheads on the front. You know what you should have done? It's almost like the feed zone drama thing. Like everyone should have agreed to stop.
Don't attack the chase. You can't attack the chase.
Yeah, it's neutral.
Yeah. And I don't think they attacked it. I mean, I don't blame anyone. And I would have been dropped probably in the next 10 minutes or something anyways, but it makes a better story, I think.
Yeah, there's a term that my friend at Giro brought up about the difference between gravel and road, and he used the term casual alpha, which kind of makes sense in gravel. You have guys that have mustaches and wear flannel, but they go hard. They make it look effortless, but they're still going hard.
Casual alpha. I like that. So what's next? You're not obviously you're not at Whiskey Off Road.
No, I'm not at Whiskey. That's in Arizona. I'm definitely going to Unbound.
Yep.
I already bought my plane ticket for that one. I've been thinking about going to Gravel Locos, but that may be difficult for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just because of what happened last year.
Were you there? Were you
I wasn't. No, okay. I wasn't. I remember like all the commotion. Like I was getting, my phone was blowing up, and that was super hard. And I don't know if I could. No offense to Texas, but I don't have a burning desire to go to Texas.
Sure.
But I'm sure the barbecue is good. But I'll go to Unbound, and then this summer I'm going to SBT Foco Fondo. I'd like to visit my friend Jess, who runs Last Best Ride in Montana. I was there for the very first event. Talk about spirit of gravel. That's so much fun. There wasn't even like a start. It was like, okay, let's roll. And then we rolled, and I mean, Ted King still won, but it's a fun event.
I've heard nothing but good things about that, and that's definitely on my list of like something I want to experience for sure. Yeah. I was just talking to someone at BWR who was there last year and gonna go back this year, but or not BWR at Barry Roubaix. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Montana is beautiful, and these events are not in the same, like you go to Unbound and you go to like Mammoth Tough or Last Best. It's a different vibe in the sense that it's just less stuff to deal with. Like you hang out at a park and have sandwiches. Like, I guess you could still do that at Unbound, but there's so much more hype building up to it.
Yeah.
And then Leadville, they're getting rid of the lead boat weekend.
Yeah,
and they're moving Leadville a week apart.
Yeah, I saw that.
I might just stay in Colorado.
Yeah, you should.
That way it's so beautiful. I love it there.
Do you need to acclimate just to make sure you're shooting and everything is going correctly? You need to acclimate to the to the altitude just to do your job.
Man, I need to not only acclimate to the altitude, I need to acclimate my equipment. I have so many things that I've shot where the sound was off or the record button's on, it's my feet walking, because the camera's dangling down. And all those little things I learned from. So I basically, one thing in the media, you actually make friends with the same people you see every event. And I start picking their brain. I look who's got the nice camera. It's almost like a bike race where you see who's got the nice bike, who's
Oh
dialed
yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah.
who has all their equipment set up, who looks fit enough. So I do the same thing. And I just pick their brain until they tell me to stop. And I'm like, okay, what's your shutter speed? You slam your ISO down. Do you use a variable ND filter? How do you make it less shaky? What's your image stabilization? Just all these things. I mean, I still YouTube all that, but I just make friends with them, talk to them. I was nervous last year at Leadville, especially because I got hired by Canyon Bikes to run their social media
Wow, wow,
and
wow.
their TikTok and put stuff on their Instagram. And I'm double checking my spelling and just
Oh
super
man.
nervous. And then I'm staying in the same house with Pete and big tall Wayne and JB, like living with them, like in the same house. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying know when to okay, they're about to get undressed. I'll put the camera down, like just all the little things that never actually make it to the video.
So
Um,
you're like 100% solo though, just you. You're not. You don't have another like anyone else helping you get the footage. It's just like you're by yourself doing this.
So yeah, for 99% of the time, it's just me and my camera.
Okay.
I have had help. Like if I need an extra person, I'll just pay them for that event and then
Mm-hmm.
hope that the YouTube money's enough to
Oh
break
man.
even on that. It's always pay first and get paid later.
Yeah.
And like for BWR, I had a kid volunteer for a BWR Arizona. I had a friend shoot vertical video and then send it to me, and then I would edit it and then post that on TikTok and Reels and stuff. So, and then I'll do a green screen where I'm talking with my purple little mini mic
Mm-hmm.
and then just doing a 1 minute recap of the race. So, I definitely do 99% by myself. If and when one day I can bring on more people, I'd love to,
Sure.
but I have no desire to be like Flow Sports or these big production teams where it's and back to you, we're live and this and that and
Yeah. Yeah.
analysis. It's just that's not me. It's I want to know what you had for breakfast
Well, is
and
that?
film.
I think I'm not sure if that's what people are looking for always either. Like I'm looking for like uh real time updates, or just I don't know if I want, GCN sports all the time.
Right.
Sometimes if I'm looking on Instagram or whatever, like that's not the kind of content I'm looking for uh updates on Unbound or Leadville or whatever. But you as soon as you bring in someone else, then logistics get more difficult and money gets more difficult. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool to hear that you can accomplish what you're doing solo. You mentioned this is not your full-time job, right? Like
No,
you have a job, or you have
I have a side hustle.
a side. Wait, this is your side hustle, right?
Yeah, no, this is my side
Yeah,
hustle, but I
yeah,
always joke that my other job is a side hustle just because I love doing this so much. And
yeah.
it's, some people call it a workcation. Uh, I just think that, when you mix your passion with something that can go well for you, uh, it's kind of serendipitous. And, if you're filling a need that people want to see and you're getting to tell the story that you want to tell, like if I was hired by, say, Cycling Tips, I don't think I'd be able to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I like being independent. And I also like being responsible for my own tone and my own vibe. And maybe that's hubris talking, but I just think that I have a lot to say and a lot to show. And I think I'm at the point where I have kind of decent access to things that not every quote unquote journalist gets to see. And that's been built over the years with a little bit of trust.
Yeah.
So yeah, my day job is I teach psychology and economics, and I use that when I'm doing my videos and stuff.
Oh,
like
certainly. You teach in a high school level or a college level?
Yeah, no, I teach mostly seniors in high school. And that's why during the summer, I can just go and travel.
Yeah.
And then during the winter, I can travel. And, I just had spring break, which is, I was at BWR in Sea Otter. So I basically use every holiday and then every vacation day that I can use for this. I mean, I may have to go down to part-time because I did earn money last year, and not just YouTube money. Most of my money actually came. And this is so weird because this may happen on your podcast where someone will find you and go, "Oh, hey, we like your stuff. Can you come work for us?" And so that's what happened with Canyon. They called me up out of the blue and they said, "Hey, can you work with us at Leadville and Steamboat?" And I was like, "Yes," and yes. And the best question he asked was, "What's your bike size?" And I'm like, "Yes." Even though I still don't have a bike yet, but I'm good without it for now. But other brands will like for Unbound, I'm shooting my Veloworthy video, but I'm doing like 3 or 4 other jobs for other brands. And that's where it's gonna basically pay for my plane ticket, my car rental, my housing, my food, and then hopefully a little bit of money on top of that where I can, take my wife out to dinner.
Yeah, for sure. I can, the most important.
Yeah, exactly.
So of all these races last year and races this year, what are you looking, what's your favorite race to be at or to cover?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say Unbound gets me the most nervous for a lot of different reasons. There's a little bit more pressure to I want to make a good video.
Certainly.
I remember the first day I hit send on it or publish, and I was refreshing, and it was like 1,000 views every time I refreshed it. You kind of get hooked on that.
Yeah.
But honestly, the most fun I had was at this race in Fort Collins, Foco Fondo. It's run by Whitney and Zach Allison. Such a fun event. They have it at the new Belgian brewery where it starts and finishes from. They hooked me up. They put me in this mansion that's owned by the owners of New Belgium. I stayed with me, Ben Delaney, Jason, who runs Gravel Cyclist, Neil Shirley of Envy, and we're staying there. They gave me my own driver, my own truck, my own intern to navigate. We had so much fun in the truck. Avery came along with Willie, the dog, Alexi's dog. And we crashed the truck. We were ahead of the break. Alexi was in it. And the driver, she passed him wide. And we went so wide, we got into a ditch. And we were going to flip over. And Avery was holding Willie, oh my God, Willie, hang on. And we got stuck. Alexi saw the whole thing happen because we were in front of him. And he was like, should we stop and help them mid-race? They kept on rolling, soft pedaling. Meanwhile, we're stuck there. It's a 4-wheel drive Toyota Tundra. We couldn't get out. We had a passerby just happened to have a wench and pull us out of the ditch. And then we caught up with them and rolled down the window and held Willie up, and Alexi was fine and Willie was fine. But it's stuff like that, you don't see. And it's just such a fun event. I really love that kind of stuff.
Was that earlier this season?
That was in July.
Okay. So no, that wasn't earlier.
After Unbound. Yeah.
Okay.
Such a good event.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Cool. And then, so the next one is Unbound.
It'll be Unbound. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting in there on Wednesday. The race is on Saturday. I have a lot of work to do between Wednesday and Saturday. Last year it rained. And so my camera is not waterproof. So I had to take a plastic bag and wrap it up.
Oh my God.
And use my GoPro and my phone for parts. Hopefully people can't tell, but I was doing that. And then the other side that a lot of people don't know is the pro athletes want content of them, and they'll make an arrangement with me ahead of time, like, oh, hey, if you happen to get footage, just send it to me and I'll Venmo you. So I'm always looking out for that. The thing is, if they're not in the top, we can't go against the flow of traffic,
Mm-hmm,
so to
mm-hmm.
speak, which kills me because I want to cover the women as well. And so if I happen to have footage, I'll film them and then send it to them, and they'll Venmo me, $100 or something like that for a few seconds. But because they need content too. Not every pro can afford to bring their own media person with them,
Right.
unless you're Keegan
Or Alexi.
or Alexi.
Yeah. So last question. You're obviously a fan of cycling. You mentioned Canyon, and you were stoked about them asking what size you ride. Amongst all of this stuff, day job, this, are you able to get out on your own? Are you able to continue riding at a regular um, schedule? Has that suffered a little bit? Like I mean, I know what it's like to be busy, and I mean, I work in the cycling industry too, and it's like, man, it's a little bit of a, it's kind of bittersweet at times. So how's that going in your life?
So first of all, when I'm out there, even though I'm in a car, a lot of times I get serious FOMO. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was there right now. Even if I could ride next to him for 30 seconds. But the way I do it is I ride as much as I can. I don't race anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do specific intervals anymore. I don't use training peaks anymore. But I ride and ride hard. I have my one bike that I use with three different wheel sets. I have my gravel wheel set, my aero wheel set, and my mid wheel set. It's on my Crux, which is basically an Athos with wide tire
Right.
clearance.
Yeah.
And it's still a one by. But the way I do it is I ride to the point of overload. Then I use the events to rest. So I'm off the bike for like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And by the time I'm done with the event, I get back on the bike again and ease into it. So I almost do this overload thing where I do it on purpose because I know I have a forced rest coming up.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's
That's
fun.
and you don't get like uh speaking of overload, it's not like you're overloaded with just cycling in general where you just don't even want to touch the bike, or you don't even want to is it
After Sea Otter, maybe.
yeah,
By
yeah.
Sunday, I saw vendors tearing down at like 11
And
a.m.
yeah, 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 we did too. It's like, what the heck? It also,
Yeah,
the weather was kind of shitty at that point of the
yeah.
day, but well, that's cool. I mean, I really admire people that have kind of carved out a place um in a space where what they love to do, and I see you know, like in the last few years, Veloworthy has been popping up more and more, and I really admire like what you've done and what you continue to do, and I'm stoked that we were able to run into each other at Sea Otter and have this conversation. So, Brian, thank you. I appreciate your time and coming on the podcast.
Thanks so much. It was awesome to be on the other side of the microphone.
Well, I mean, you're equally talented on that side of the microphone as you are on the other side, or on the other side of the camera, I guess, whatever. Cool, Brian. Thanks so much.
Awesome.